welcome to Tabletop Talk. We're your hosts, Kyle
and Rick.
And we've got today with us Odin the Pug and, of course, producer Chris.
Hi.
So, Rick, I think you have some exciting news.
I do. So a couple weeks ago, after recording a podcast episode, Jeremy and I looked at our local card shop.
Wait, hold on. You have a podcast?
I'm on a podcast.
You're on a podcast?
Yeah.
Producer Chris, did you know he's on a podcast?
No comment.
But
I wish I was on a podcast.
I think he had reached out to our local card shop and we found out that they were getting the special edition art of the core rulebook instead of just the regular one. And they had 3 copies left. So Jeremy and I bought 2 of the final 3. And I got an email 2 days ago, someday, that it was available. The release date totally snuck up on me. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's available now. Like I forgot.
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't the last time we hung out, I didn't hear you bragging about it.
Yeah,
and such, so.
But so I went and picked that up. It's got the fancy art on it. I'll show the camera that's not existent right now as I.
Ooh, very, very beautiful.
Shiny.
Yeah. And they've also released the special edition art for the Dungeon Master Guide and the Monster Manual.
Nice.
That'll come out months from now. So I probably will end up buying those 2. But yeah, so I picked it up. Just the physical copy for now.
Okay.
I haven't done the D&D Beyond digitalized.
Okay, I was going to ask you next if you ended up getting that yet, because I know you've been excited about it.
Yeah. Partially because I wanted to get this special edition art, and then I'll probably just end up buying the D&D Beyond version of it, so I can start doing character creation there. But I've actually been really happy with it. One of the videos I watched in the lead up to this from Wizards, the artists and the guys working on it really talked about how they wanted it to be more than just a manual of how to play, but really showcase the art that goes behind character creation. And you can totally see it in this, the weapons, for instance. Instead of it just listing the weapons, it lists them. If it's a martial weapon, if it's a 2-handed great weapon, if it's one-handed, all of the stats to it, how you calculate your damage. And the very next page is pictures of all of the listed weapons.
That's
and what they
awesome.
look like. And it's so cool. It's very just great art, but just so you can see it. It's what is the difference between a spear and a halberd? Here it is.
Yeah.
Here's a glaive. I've never thought about having a character have one until I saw it.
I've made a few characters with glaives, but I'm a huge glaive fan, especially.
I used to play Dynasty Warriors, played with the glaive, and it's how have I not done this in a character yet? I've played characters with quarterstaffs. Why not put a knife on the end?
I pretty much, when I used to do a lot of LARPing, I made a glaive that I used similar to Oberyn Martell from Game of Thrones.
Perfect.
Did the same fighting style as the video one.
And you still have your eyeballs. So that's really
somehow,
yeah.
That's because I didn't sit there yelling over my guy too proud of my victory.
Yeah.
Funny how pride is the downfall.
I like the art in it. I think one of the first times we started breaking down what this new rulebook would look like, I took the stance that I really feel like it's designed for expanding the playerverse and really focused on how it helps support newer players.
Okay.
And after reading through this, I think I am more into that mentality. Within the first few pages, it's what does this new rule book do? And the first 3 points are, makes this easier, it's streamlined, easier for this. It's okay, that kind of solidifies my stance there.
Yeah.
And the way it just breaks down how your origins are where your bonuses come from. Each one's got it's about a half-page section on each page for each of the origins. Tells you what you get, your starting equipment, and then a brief little here's how you can base your character. You grew up in the streets as a criminal, and you've built this network of people just like you have been cast aside. It's okay, it helps you with that.
Unlike 5e's where the backgrounds, they give you a very brief description.
Yes.
And all, which I will say, I was hoping this edition would touch up more on it because I like the idea of the backgrounds. That was a new thing for 5e.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a little iffy on the ability scores coming from there. I'm cool with like either way, but just coming from years and years.
Yeah.
Of
yeah.
The other, but I'm happy when you mentioned the art stuff in there, because that makes me think a little bit more back to like the 3.5 player's handbook.
Mm-hmm.
They used to have like the hand-drawn art like next to the names and such as well. I was really disappointed that they didn't do that for 5e.
Yeah, and you can tell that they really go back to that. I haven't looked all the way through, but one of the videos I watched, they did make a point to say that the art shouldn't always be completed in these, because it's about creating the character.
Yeah.
And the art should reflect the process of that. So as you're starting early on, it's a lot of hand-drawn. Like you can see like the guidelines in the pencil art. And by the time you get to your weapons and your background and like the latter pieces of your character creation, it gets way more exuberant, a lot more colorful. It's like, okay, you can really see the like overarching, like you start at the beginning and you end up with your playable character through the process of this. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm very excited to start playing around in it.
So does it feel, just looking at it? I know you've got a bunch of 5e books. You're, I know, the only competitor with me at the moment. In the group.
You still have me well beat. But this is book, I want to say 6.
Okay,
I have 6 because I've got Tasha's.
I know. I'm trying to like. I'm even looking at my list here, and I'm like, I know there was a few that I had to like. Go, wait, Rick, was this yours or mine?
I have Tasha's, Xanathar's, the Monster, the Dungeon Master Guide, the Player's Handbook, and then I bought a DMware. DM Dave is a website that does a bunch of homebrew content,
okay, yeah, you and me have talked about that.
Kickstarted a whole new like source book. And adventure guide, and so I supported his source book. So I have that because of one of the characters races he made in that is an elemental.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, I could just play a character made of fire. Yeah, absolutely.
Man, so it's
I will pay the $50 for that.
Upping the Ganassi deal there.
Very similar to a Ganassi, but just more straight up elemental, rather than it being like a being designed after the elements. So I liked that a lot. That's really how I pick my handbooks, is what race, character, or class does it add to this?
That's a big pick for me too. Yeah. Aside, I mean, ignore all the clear campaign books in there, but
which is why the Monsters of the Multiverse is my next like on the list, because of all of the characters and races, particularly with the creatures that I like playing as. It opens up the door to all of those.
It really does. That's probably my favorite book I have. Is
that one
Monsters
and
of the Multiverse.
One of the dragon ones is on my list. Not the Tyranny of Dragons, but it's like one of the a different dragon like realm based one.
Okay.
I have on there just because I looked. I was like, "Oh, dragons, yes." I'm sometimes
dragons do sometimes come with Dungeons and Dragons. Believe it or not,
sometimes get really complex in my like motivations, and then other times it's very easy to get me on board. And dragons is one of those ways of like, "Oh, yeah, I'll do it." But overall, my initial like having only a couple days reading through it a few times definitely gets an A+ for me already.
Okay, well, in that case, so I guess. Quickly jumping back to the difference between it and 5e, do you feel like, I know there's been a lot of back and forth that Wizards keeps saying it's not a new edition, it's just kind of an updated deal to the rules.
Yeah.
There's clearly all over you can find a lot of back and forth on whether people agree with that or think it should have been its own edition.
Tons.
After now, you've had your hand on it. I know you've said you haven't gone all the way through it, but so far, what does it feel to you? Does it feel like it's just an enhancement of 5e or a whole new edition?
I think it would have been best served as being presented as a 5.5. And so not a full new edition, but it's very clearly reshaping, particularly the character creation side of things, with, I think, more of an emphasis over to the like more novice player, which... When you think about like your playing field, and if you have a bunch of veteran players and a bunch of novice players, you should put the onus on the veteran players to be able to adapt within the realm of playing more so than a new player. because the new player is going to just start whatever it is.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
And the veteran players are going to have the savvy to adjust to change and to conform to this new way more than a new player is.
Right. Or, I mean, what we have been seeing is a lot of people flipping over to either Pathfinder or other games too.
True.
But, that's just people are going to do what they're going to do. No matter what, we support what you choose.
Yeah.
Just, because I mean, I have not hid my opinion. I have not been looking forward to this one. There's no getting around that. But I will say, just looking at it, I do love the art I've seen in it. The things you've mentioned, I've been like, okay. And I have used the free stuff that they did on D&D Beyond to create a character. And I did not actually mind the way it was done.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It did get my intrigue a little more doing it myself.
Yeah.
So I will give it a try at some point. But it's interesting then that you say it's more of a 5.5. So
yeah, I wouldn't say it's fully new, but I definitely think the changes to it are enough that it should be given its own backing.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be, hey, here's an update.
Yeah,
it's very weird for it to be an update, but not actually change.
Yeah, I feel like that was very much just Wizards trying to sound edgy with it's not a new edition or half an edition. We're not even doing editions
And
anymore.
I think a lot of the pre-concerns from people, before people even had their hands on stuff, a lot of the really staunch opinions either side, it could have waned some of that down a little bit had they just said, here's a 5.5. We're changing a few things given a lot of the new attention D&D got. We went through a pandemic where everyone was at home for a long time, and a lot of new players, myself included, started playing during that time again or for the first time. They just had a very successful movie come out with some very notable actors.
I do love that movie.
It's so good.
Well, you've seen I'm wearing that shirt almost every time. I'm not wearing it today, but
no,
I was wearing it yesterday passing out posters.
Your audience is growing, and you have to be able to address that. And they did the right thing by making some adjustments to allow for that. Maybe more swayed to that new player than the veteran players, which I can get the sense that you have of almost a veteran player could almost feel a little bit left out because it's seems very rudimentary.
And I think that's a lot of how they presented it. I don't think it's necessarily the addition. There's a lot of things, and we hear it all the time from all sorts. You and me are not exactly friends of corporations.
True.
So, I mean, we hear a lot of things, and sometimes even to just get hype, they make sure that pot is getting stirred just enough and all.
Whether you're 100% pro, 100% con, that's still discourse being spoken about, and that's still them being relevant. And that's always going to be
in this time period, especially this time period.
Yeah.
Any news is good news. Bad news is good news. Good news is good news.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shame that that's how it works, but it's more so it's shame when then it leads to us or something disagreeing on something, and all of a sudden just opinions get heated.
Yeah.
And obviously we walk away usually cool with it, but I know that's not the case for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think we'll really see the impact that this new rulebook has when the Dungeon Master Guide comes out in November. Because it's going to take some time for players to incorporate this into their existing campaigns if they're going to, or if they start new campaigns with this, you're not going to see a total difference, or it's not going to game change anything within the first few sessions. It's going to take a little bit of time.
I will say, I think Wizards did a disservice to themselves not letting them all off at the same time.
Yeah.
I get they're probably trying to spread out the amount that's spent, so it's we get all this income slowly together instead of all at once.
I believe each release is in a different quarter as well. So
that's what I've caught. Yeah.
There's definitely a specific business decision that was made there.
Anyone who's worked retail, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Yep. I don't know what their fiscal year looks like, but the fact that they are 3 months apart each is not a coincidence. So they'll have a good year this fiscal year for Wizards and Hasbro's is going to be great because whether people love it or hate it, they're going to buy it and they're going to interact with it and the impressions.
For sure. I mean, we're talking about it right now. You and I believe you mentioned Jeremy bought it as well, right?
Yes, he did.
I'll be curious to get his opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing that I think is worth noting about this is the glossary and the index at the end. You see it a bit in the Dungeon Master Guide now. Not a ton in the player's handbook right now of being able to quickly reference something. Like if you know the name of a spell but don't know where in the book it is, the index at the end and the glossary is going to be incredible.
No, I will say that was a huge thing I did not like about the 5e book, and I didn't even notice it until I think you and me were talking, and I didn't get back to you on it, but I went through and started looking at it. I was like, of course it's got a glossary. What the?
And I think the player's handbook one is just
the players. That's what
barely
I'm
there.
It's
the
not
Dungeon
much.
Master one's better. Like I remember on our grappling and like flanking episode, like you were able to see what page it's on by going to the back, but that's because it was the Dungeon Master Guide, not the player's guide. It was for the Dungeon Master.
Well, and not everybody has like the 5e book memorized like I do. So to me, I just assumed there was one.
Right.
And it's funny. I know we had to do a redaction the other day about like elves and spells, and that was because we talked a little later, and I had mentioned to you guys, I was like, "Hey guys, they are in here," and we laughed about the fact that apparently nobody plays elves enough in our group to know this. I was talking to a buddy of mine. He just moved back into the area, and he's expressed some interest in possibly hopping on the show, and I've mentioned him to you and Chris a couple times. We won't throw names out until we know if he's going to join us.
Peer pressure,
but
peer pressure,
it was
peer
funny.
pressure.
I was talking with him, and he was like, I didn't hear very many things that were wrong in that one because he had just listened to it while they were moving. And I was like, really? I mean, there wasn't a lot. There's only a few things that needed to be updated, but like the spells for elves and tieflings, he's like, elves and tieflings had spells in 5e? I'm like, bro, you're the only one who's been playing longer than me. How did you not know that? And he said the exact same thing, that I guess I just don't play elves enough.
It's a weird thing of like, you go to play something like Dungeons and Dragons and you want to do something that lets your creativity that really lets you flaunt your creativity. To me, sometimes playing a human or an elf is so
vanilla.
Yes, that it just feels like, oh, I could be doing so much more if I play a platypus or an Aarakocra. Like, there's so many other like very exuberant species that we can play as now. That's gonna take me a bit of time.
Trust me, it's throwing me off, and I was the one who talked about it first on here, so it's been stuck in my head because I worked hard to memorize for that episode.
But so I mean, I really should like at least once just have a really dope Legolas with a longbow and 2 like scimitars, like just really go after it. But
you mean Legolas?
I listened to more of that, and man, it's a, like I've said, it's a dramatization of it. It's not necessarily a full audiobook, so everything moves really fast. Within like driving around, it went from arriving at Edoras to getting rid of Wormtongue to then boom, they're on the way to Hammerheld, ready for the Battle of Helm's Deep, and it was like, what? And then I'm like listening to it. They're like 10,000s of 10,000s and this and that, and on the ridge comes a white light and the White Rider. It's like, this is already happening?
Hold on. Where's the intimacy here?
Right? So it's very interesting, but at the end of the Battle of Helm's Deep, I need to go talk to Saruman. It's like, no, just stop talking about the characters by name. But like I said, it's before the movies, so
for sure,
all of our inputs.
Well, I mean, again, we talked about it last time too with like Hermione, like I thought it was funny. Me and Jeremy both thought it was Hermione.
Hermione was the class, my class. So
it is interesting how language evolves, and especially with fictional names, because it could go anywhere. And unfortunately, we don't have Tolkien with us to tell us. Where at least we have like Rowling and Martin and
Yeah.
a few others.
I mean, as much as George R. R. Martin doesn't want to finish his stories.
I know. Yeah.
That's a
whole other thing. I was going to say,
I
oh man, Rick jumped on that because he saw me all of a sudden start to heat up.
Yeah.
And all.
I really do love Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, but
it's wonderful stuff.
Can I drag him through the mud for how much he's intentionally not finishing his story?
Yep. Yep.
As a creative, like literate based mind, he is intentionally not finishing it at this point. And he's not even hiding it. He's now doing blog posts about House of Dragon episodes and everything he disagrees with it. And it's like, you have a story to finish. You've had Dance of Dragons came out, 2010? Maybe 2012?
Dance of Dragons was, I think you were right the first time.
It's been at least 10 years. And I think
it was 12 because I think it came out after I graduated.
Yeah, it is. I respect the journey and the process it takes to write a book, especially of that caliber and that fandom.
And that long.
It does not take this long.
It's an energy draining process to make something that big. But
he's also written Fire and Blood. Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. He's been working on other projects instead of just admitting, look, he keeps teasing it in front of us. And I'm not chill with that.
No, neither am I. He's holding on to the... I don't want to sound totally bashing of him because he did create a really cool universe.
He did, but keep in mind, he also bashes a lot of other people unnecessarily. So he's one of the few people I don't feel too bad about it.
He's holding on to the relevancy that he still has, and he is what appears to me is he is terrified of no one caring anymore. And he knows when he finishes the story, when he finishes all of the other 2-3 books that he wants to write, quote unquote, no one will care anymore. They'll finish it. They'll be like, that was really great. And then they will be on the shelves saying, I have everything.
Yeah, it's very clear. And I mean, this is obviously speculation. I'm not a trained professional psychologist out there, people. Although I could be, and I'm not telling anyone. That's why I hide it behind my bartending license.
Yes.
And
sometimes bartenders are the best therapists.
It's true. We know a lot about things. More things than we want to know sometimes.
Yep.
I do kind of miss that job, but at the same time, I don't at all. But what I was going to say is Martin really gives off, he has like a really hard attention complex, I'm noticing, because he loves being in the spotlight and just kind of doing the neener. I'm going to tease you because you're giving me attention. And as soon as everyone stops, he has to come out with something radical. Yeah. Like you were saying, he talks crap on House of Dragons and such, which I have not seen yet. I'm really excited to watch it. I don't know what's taken me so long. I know exactly what. It's paying for subscription services. There's too many of them, and I don't want to get it to watch 2 shows.
Yeah. It gives me seasons 2 through 5 vibes. Like, it is good.
Good.
Some of season 1, particularly in the first few episodes, are very intense and hard to watch. Like blood and guts kind of ways.
I was going to ask you to clarify because I know your guys' half of the table versus like my little corner over here.
Yeah.
Has a very different tolerance for
Yes. There are some scenes that are just a little bit more gruesome. Not like battle blood and guts, but like other types of blood and guts. It's like,
are we talking like a lot more of the mountain taking down like Oberyn stuff, or
very
are we
within that realm of like unnecessary detail into something that could have been like a few seconds? And like, I get what happened, but they make it's almost like, you know how like Family Guy takes a joke and runs with it, and it's like, that's hilarious, and they keep going, and you're like, okay, this is really old now.
They run into the ground,
and then they keep going just long enough that it becomes funny again. Yes. Or the Dean fries are done. Like, everything goes a little too long. Game of Thrones, or not Game of Thrones, but House of the Dragon, particularly with a few like scenes with kids, like babies, infants, or like birthing scenes.
Okay.
Spend a little too much on it, and they show.
I will say once kids are involved, I don't like it anymore.
It's rough.
I don't mind watching guys who look like us get like the beat out of them, because I'm pretty sure all 3 of us who are here have that coming. The only one who doesn't is Odin.
Yeah.
And he's probably the one who's going to beat us up. So,
He's first in line.
I mean,
he's first in line.
So without too spoilerly, the queen dies in like episode 1, and they show a lot of detail about how it happens, more than what made me comfortable. That almost made me stop watching. But
oh man!
But it's
well, we're sorry, viewers. We got way off track here.
We did.
No,
but overall, story wise, especially come season 2, it is really good.
So. And I apologize, especially for any House of the Dragon fans out there who are just getting excited about this, or anyone who is like us and just can go with any conversation.
Yep.
We're trying to keep it streamlined, we promise, but we keep in mind our real conversations that are not us actively trying to focus are even more chaotic.
Yes.
So this is an improvement.
Great.
Like,
it's great.
Producer Chris hasn't pulled out the like multi-headed whip yet for us.
There's no stop sign of like quit talking. So I'm fine.
He's flipped us off a couple times, but that usually means we're doing good.
Yeah.
But going back quickly, I know we're running out of time here, but going back to the player's handbook, how familiar are you with like Pathfinder?
I haven't played Pathfinder. I have friends that play it. And I have friends that since this has been announced are playing Pathfinder more. Like you said, like people are, if they have a certain particular view of not really caring for the new changes, that there are other options out there. I have a few friends that play in a campaign that they're starting to incorporate Pathfinder a bit more now because of it. And
you know, and I think the truth of that is it's not really the rules. I think we're coming down to just wizards and how they're handling stuff. Because I think when you and me talk about this, there's a genuine like, okay, you catch I'm a little more interested in when you try to sell it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that wizards and people who work at wizards have very, very strong opinions in certain things and will say very rude things without realizing they're harming or attacking their like core players, the people who've helped get them the money they have.
Absolutely.
So I'm for making things easier for new players.
Yeah.
No problem there.
But you can't ignore your base that's kept you around for the last 50 years.
Exactly. And I think we see that a lot lately happening. But where I was going with the Pathfinder thing is Wizards, anyone can look this up, but Wizards has been hemorrhaging money for some time. Hasbro itself has.
Yeah.
And D&D had been suffering a loss of players for quite some time. Like, not like they didn't have an abundant amount, but a lot of people have started moving over the last few years to Pathfinder. Yeah. And I've mentioned to you that these rules come off more like Pathfinder to me. And in turn, it makes me think, I wonder if they're trying to almost convert to the Pathfinder realm to try and win players back or to make back whatever revenue and all. But so I'm thinking maybe we'll need to do an episode here. Maybe you and me like could go 50-50, get a Pathfinder book. Yeah. Pathfinder 2, of course, because last time I did play Pathfinder, I will say I felt like a god on Earth. I was a level like 2 or 3 character, and I was like just dominating an entire pirate ship. That's my huge issue I had with Pathfinder.
I do know Pathfinder is really easy to get a little OP.
It's basically fantasy superheroes.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with that. I think that's really fun. But when I think D&D, I think of hardcore like, oh, this is like consequences.
Right. I think of it as an if-then. Like, if I do this, then this will happen to the rest of the party or the campaign or the story.
Or like there's to do this, I might have to die
action
in
and
this,
consequence is a huge part of it. And
that's kind of where I think a lot of us older players are kind of looking at this is a mixture of that. And then when we feel like also, oh, the company doesn't appreciate the fact we've been with them for so long.
Yeah.
I think we're going to still see some of these numbers drop. So I'll be curious with looking at the sales later on. And I think we should definitely cover the Pathfinder book.
I think so too, especially with it kind of mirroring those mechanics a little bit more. But I think hearkening back to a previous episode we had where we talked about other tabletop games. Yeah. I think overall, new rulebook, staying on the 2014 rulebook, playing Pathfinder, playing a tabletop RPG really should all be that counts. Whether you're playing D&D, you're playing Call of Cthulhu, you're playing the Star Wars one, you're playing the Alien
Dungeon
one.
Crawl Classic.
Yeah.
That actually is meant to be like the hardest version. It's right behind you. I have the book on there. It's the DCC RPG.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically old school D&D.
Mhm.
And I totally forgot to bring it up when we were talking about other games. For anyone who is the old school D&D fan, that might be the way you want to go.
Yeah.
It's very reminiscent to like early D&D.
Yeah.
I need to really go through the rules because I want to run it, but I know it's one of the few games that the store owner flat out told me, he's like, tell your players to make 5 characters.
Perfect.
And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, I guess that makes a fun game to sometimes have that. And he's like, no, I'm telling you, like, this is not your average RPG.
Yeah.
But, yeah, well, thanks, Rick, for bringing the book, taking a look at it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it sounds like you have no regrets, and I'm happy that you've got no regrets.
Not yet.
And I'm excited to see what does come out of it.
Yeah.
I think, like, I'm excited to see more like what our group and what players will do with it.
Yes. And like we've said before, or if you've watched your own videos about it, ultimately, this new rulebook is as close to a plug and play as you can probably get from Wizards, to where if collectively the player's universe hates this new rulebook, I mean, D&D Beyond might not support it, but you can just play the 2014 rule guide.
No, you're absolutely right.
You can pickpocket out of here and be like, you know what? I really like this. Use that. Obviously, consult with your DM. Make sure things are all hunky-dory there. But it is designed for if you aren't a big fan of the wholesale changes.
Mm-hmm.
Use them as you want in your campaign to DM's discretion for the new changes, or if you just keep playing the old way.
Yep. Well, thank you guys for listening to us. I know we went on a little bit of a tangent there, and we went a little over, but I could tell Rick was excited about this. And
I refuse to apologize.
I mean, fair enough. And, yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, feel free to rate us a high number on there. And producer Chris, would you like to give them the outro for us?
Of course.
While he's flipping through, play on. And if you guys do pick up a copy of the new handbook and you get a chance to read through it, or somehow have a campaign that was just waiting for the rule book and you get a chance to play it, let us know what your thoughts are on the new rule book.
Yeah, you guys know where to find us at.
Follow us on X at TT Talk Pod for updates, podcast episodes, and YouTube releases. Also follow us on TikTok at TabletopTV LLC. We're posting there soon as well. Join our Reddit page at r/TabletopTV. And finally, go make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel called Tabletop TV, where we're posting tabletop gameplays and rules, how to plays, campaign videos, all over there. All these links are in the Linktree at linktr.ee/tabletoptalk. Also, all of these are down in the description below.
All right, fans, we love you. Be safe, and game on.
Fourth Aeolingus.
Do you think they're going to complain and send a comment that we went back to another just random quick exit?
I want someone to comment and be like, he just said what King Theoden says.